Hello and welcome to Transformation Tuesday. While I wait for a few guys to jump on, tonight's topic is how do we handle fear? How do we become the masters of fear? And as you're watching this beautiful sunset here in Scarborough, I'm going to put on a couple of intro welcome tunes while I wait for a few people to jump on. So I hope you guys are doing well. Give us a shout out as you're jumping on. Hope you guys are doing well. Tonight's tune is by Dennis Lloyd. Hope you guys like this little one. Maybe I could incorporate a bit of a DJ with my coaching career. What do you reckon? Hey Mariana, how you doing? There we go, enough of the music, Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hey Mariana, welcome. Good to have you back again. Hey Matt, good to have you here as well, buddy. Tonight we're talking about fear. Thank you. How do we become the masters of fear? How do we see fear in a different way? Some different perspectives on fear such that we can be the masters of it rather than it being the master of us. So I'm going to share with you some perspectives and some ways of dealing with fear that help us minimize it, overcome it, become the master of it. And I'm going to dive straight in. And if you guys have questions as we go, please drop in your questions. And I'm going to go straight into dismantling fear once and for all. So fear, what is it? Well, I think it was Zig Ziglar when he said fear stands for false evidence appearing real. Fear is the ultimate illusion. Fear is a hallucination. Ultimately, it's an emotion. It's a future-based emotion, and it's an emotion that we generate. It's an emotion that we create. Now, it's a creation. It's a creation of our mind. Fear is ultimately an illusion, and we create it. So, well, okay, how do we create it? How do we understand how we create it? How do we not create it? How do we create something else? And then how do we put in place some processes, some action steps, some protocols, some habits, and some rituals in order to avoid experiencing fear? Because you've got to agree it's not a particularly nice emotion to be experiencing. So I want to share with you some ways of understanding that and how to actually do that. So first of all, well, what is fear? Well, it's a feeling. So it's an emotion. So it's an emotional response. So it's a state. So it's a combination of all of the physical sensations we experience in terms of the observed features that we observe, things like heart rate, temperature, all the different factors that we would observe. Now, I'm going to get into some key distinctions here, but some people observe excitement and fear as very, very similar sensations. So you could actually say that fear and excitement are basically just different sides of the same coin, depending on how you look at it. So really, fear is an unwanted emotion. Generally, it feels uncomfortable, and it's just generally there to indicate that there's some level of danger. So from an evolutionary point of view, if you like, fear is there to warn us of something. It's like a red light flashing on the dashboard of your car saying, alert, alert, be careful, there's something here to watch out for. Now, as I'm going to share with you, hey Mike, good to see you here, mate, how are you? As I'm going to share with you, this flashing red light on the dashboard, which appears as fear, which is an emotion, it doesn't always serve us. In fact, most of the time, and I'm going to tell you, in fact, all of the time, I'm going to share with you why it doesn't serve us. It completely doesn't serve us, and it's completely not necessary. That's right, fear is not necessary. In the times when we've evolved, when we needed to run from lions and tigers and bears, I think that's a line from, is it Wizard of Oz? Lions and tigers and bears. Good to hear, Mike. We no longer need that instinctive rush of adrenaline for us to run away from lions and tigers and bears. In the modern day, in the year 2018, we don't actually need that program, and it doesn't actually serve us. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about why that's the case and dispel a couple of myths and a few rumors. But ultimately, really what fear is, it's a hallucination, it's an illusion, and it's created in the mind. It's created. Some people create really intense fears like phobias. Right? Some people create phobias, and I've worked with plenty of clients, and you've probably seen some of my videos where I've been walking the streets of Perth, conquering my own fears of walking up to random strangers and helping them with phobias. And so fears can be really, really intense, like phobias, or they can be really, really mild things, like fear of doing a Facebook Live, or fear of public speaking, fear of whatever it is that comes up. And I'm going to give you some more examples about what that is. But ultimately, when we were born, we were only ever born with two fundamental fears. There's only two of them we were born with, and that's the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. So that's the only two hardwired, pre-programmed fears that we actually have when we are born into this world. And then every single other fear that we experience is generated through our experience, through our emotional occurrences, through our upbringing, through our belief system. And I'm going to dive more into that in a little bit. But ultimately, all the rest of our fears are generated. They are constructed, they are created up here. And who's to blame? The ego. The ego is to blame. The ego, which is this program that we've been loaded on with, is a fear-based program. And this is the program that generates the fear. This is the program that generates the resistance. And I'll explain a bit more about that as we go. So I often get asked the question by a lot of people, why do we have fear? Is it actually necessary? And as I said before, we originally got loaded on with the program of the ego and the program of fear, right? Which is supposed to protect us from danger, for like survival. It was a survival-based program, which is a red flashing light saying, "Look out, get out of here." And we are typically either triggered the fight or the flight response. Now, if we triggered the fight response, the emotion that we then generate as a result of triggering the fight response from being challenged or stimulated in the wild is anger. Right? So if we want to fight, that triggers the emotion of anger. Right? So it sends adrenaline, creates the emotion of anger. Right? We've got to fire up, we've got to protect ourselves. Alternatively, it triggers the emotion of, so when we flight, that triggers the emotion of fear. So that's the other side of the coin. We say, let's get the hell out of here. This isn't worth it. We're not going to win this one. Let's get out of here. So this is the prehistoric programming that's actually going on behind the scenes. And then we've evolved beyond that. We don't actually need any fears anymore. So I often get asked the question, don't we need fear to protect ourselves? Like, don't you need fear, like in case you're out at night time and there's someone behind you that's creeping up on you, don't you need fear to protect you? It's like, no, you don't. All you need is intelligence, a little bit of discernment, and consideration about where you are and what you need to do to be safe. So ultimately, fear is this unnecessary physiological emotional response or reaction, and it's not necessary. Same thing as if you're crossing the street. You don't need to be afraid of the cars in order to cross the street safely. All you need to do is be aware of and observe and have a basic level of intelligence, and then you can make a discernment, you can make a decision. Cool, what would I like to do here? Would I like to cross the road or not? Is it a safe time to be out at night? Yes or no? Should I maybe leave and cross the side of the road because there's a mysterious dark person, a darkly lit person with maybe a mysterious object that maybe looks like a weapon walking towards it? I'm going to walk the other way. So fear is never actually a necessary physiological reaction in order for us to make intelligent decisions. So first of all, I just wanted to bust that myth. So what causes our fear? Well, ultimately, it is when we believe that there's going to be something negative that's going to happen in the future. Now, a classic example of this is anxiety. Now, let me know if you guys have most people have experienced anxiety. Let me know if you guys have experienced anxiety about something. Now, anxiety is a common experience. It's a very common emotion for a lot of people to be experiencing. Now, when I say common, I don't want to say that it's a normal emotion, right? Because when I say normal, anxiety is something that you don't have to experience. Right? And when I say anxiety, there's people that have chronic anxiety. There's people that wake up and they are anxious from the moment they wake up, and they're anxious all the way through the day until they go to bed. Now, that's not actually a normal experience of life. That is a pattern, that is a program that we experience, which can be dealt with through coaching, through therapy, through timeline therapy, through hypnosis, through a lot of different modalities. So that's an example if we experience extreme anxiety or things like phobias. They are certainly not normal in that there's actually a dysfunction, if you like, that's gone on at a deeper unconscious level. And these are the types of things that I help clients with, and they're really, really simple to alleviate. But my point is that we don't actually need fears. We never have needed them, and they pretend to be necessary. In the year 2018, they're simply not necessary. So ultimately, we create a fear, we generate a fear, and it is an emotion that gets generated out of a belief system. So what do I mean? Well, fear gets generated, gets created. Now, try this on. Until you actually look at something, the fear doesn't exist. It's only when you look at an object do you then now generate the fear, because the fear wasn't there before. So therefore you have to inquire and ask, okay, well, if I'm looking at this object and now generating the emotion of fear, how am I doing that? At a strategy level, at a belief level, how am I generating the fear? Because some people are afraid of public speaking, some people are not. Some people are afraid of snakes, some people are not. Some people are afraid of walking up to a person at a bar and asking them out on a date, right? So what's the story? Everyone has different fears, so there's nothing universal about it. Everyone is creating and constructing their own fears in their own mind. It's all just an illusion, it's all just made up. And the fear only gets created when you perceive something as being dangerous, and ultimately dangerous to the point where you can't handle it. That's the key distinction here. Because if we believe that we can handle something, then it's not fear, right? So say, for example, if you knew that you were going to do brain surgery on someone, right? And you had no idea what you were doing, but if you got the opportunity to do a practice on someone first, right? Practice on someone and there was no consequences, you're like, great, let me at it. Let's just go for it. There's no consequences. However, if you're now doing it on a real person, it's the first time, what you now create is you now create the fear of the consequences. We now start buying into, well, what if this happens? What if that was to happen, right? Hey, Kat, good to see you here. So we need to start to understand, okay, well, it's now what we're forecasting is going to happen. And even more so, it's, well, what's the consequence and what's our ability to deal with the consequence? Now, ultimately, I'm just going to go all the way down to the bottom of the rabbit hole, right? If we have a fear, it is simply because we haven't sustained, curated, developed a ultimate belief that we will be able to handle what's on the other side of that. I'll say that again. The only reason why a fear exists for us is because we haven't cultivated a belief that we can handle what's on the other side of that. That's the only reason why a fear exists. Hey, Daenerys, good to see you here. How are you? So, we're starting to build this map, we're starting to build this understanding of fear, and it's an illusion, it's a construction, it gets created in the mind. Now, when we truly understand this, we can recognize, okay, I'm creating it, it's all an illusion, it's all up here about a perception about what's going to happen in the future. So it's a future-based hallucination, and then it's a lack of belief in self, a lack of trust in self that I can then handle what comes up, a lack of my ability to then deal with that and resolve it. So ultimately it comes down to a lack of a lack of trust in self. That's where fears ultimately are derived from. Because if you trust yourself to handle everything, if you trust yourself 100% unconditionally, doesn't matter what, again, this fits under the family of self-love, self-worth, self-trust. These are all very, very closely related concepts. So if you have I'm talking about ultimate, if you have ultimate self-trust that you can handle whatever, then fear doesn't exist. So therefore, we can conclude that fears only get created because of the series of systems of beliefs that we've got about our ability to deal with what's happening. Interesting to know that maybe instead of us saying, I have a fear of X, Y, and Z, we can actually change our perspective or change our level of awareness and go, you know what? I actually have a lack of a feeling of worthiness, feeling of that I'll be able to handle this, and I have a lack in my ability to trust myself. Boom. There you go. So I've just completely dismantled fear. Fear isn't this universal thing that's just bam, there you're stuck with. Everyone has it in the same way. It's actually a construction. It's all created differently. No one experiences fear in the same way. And I'm giving you this tool so you can outthink the fear. This is the first stage, is outthinking it, understanding it, becoming aware of it. And then sometimes when you have enough awareness and understanding of something, it just magically disappears. So I want to give you some other examples of fear, and I'm going to completely destroy the notion of what we commonly feel or we commonly believe about these fears. So one of the first big ones is anxiety. Now, anxiety ultimately is a future-based emotion, and it's an imagined emotion. So in order to create anxiety, the only way you can create anxiety is to imagine something in the future and it happening unsuccessfully. That's the only way you can create anxiety. If you were to imagine it happening successfully, well, you haven't created anxiety, have you? You've created probably excitement, or you've created anticipation. So thanks, Angela. Thanks, Kat. Yeah, you can outthink the fear. You start with outthinking it, and then ultimately you have to take action, which is what I'll be covering a little bit. You have to take action on the fear to integrate and embody that learning. But ultimately you can start by outthinking it, recognizing it, and observing it for the illusion that it is. And it's just an illusion. So anxiety is a future-based emotion, and it gets created, it gets generated by us imagining something not happening successfully. If you imagine it happening successfully, then you don't create anxiety. You create looking forward to that experience. Maybe excitement. right? So there's a recipe for creating emotions. Now, if you want to look back into the past, right? If you want to look back in the past and look at something that you weren't particularly happy with, that's how you do regret, right? So you go past and then you go negative. That's how you do the emotion of regret, judging something as negatively unfolding. Hey, Daniel, good to see you here, buddy. And whereas if you go back in the past and if you flip it and look at something that did go well, that's how you do pride, right? That's how you do the feeling of pride as opposed to regret. So again, there's a formula here for how we're constructing all of these emotions in our mind. It's simply a strategy. Was it future-based? Is it past? Are we judging it? Are we diminishing it? So again, there's a strategy here for how we do every single emotion, and fear is simply another strategy. Now, the great thing about fear is you can release fears. You can conquer all of your fears. It's just simply a matter of working through the processes, doing the work on yourself. Lots of processes in terms of meditation, coaching, timeline therapy. There's all sorts of cool stuff that you can do to completely release all the fears that you've got and move beyond them. And it's just a matter of time, process, commitment, consistency, and having the courage to keep taking action. I'll get to some of the processes and some of the really cool hacks you can use to overcome your fear in a second, because you're going to be able to take some of these and practically apply them straight away. So first of all, that's the question you're probably asking now, isn't it? And I know you're asking the question, well, great, Chris, we know that we've got fears. We know that we've got all these fears. Now, how do we get rid of them? Right? Well, great question. Well, the way that we get rid of them is there's a process that we need to follow. And I'd say it's a 3-part process, but I've added a 4th part on it just to give you some clarity about how to make it stick. So the first step is awareness. Now, awareness is always the first step with every removal process of any problem in your life, because if you're not aware of it, you can't change it. If you're not aware of something, you can't create a distinction around how to shift it, how to move it, how to transform your life beyond it. So first step is awareness. Now, when I say awareness, you've got to have awareness of what is the fear. Is it a fear of rejection? Is it a fear of criticism? Is it a fear of loss? Is it a fear of dying? Is it a fear of public speaking? What is that fear of? Then, once you've identified what's the fear, you've actually got to language it. You actually need to construct and write a sentence. What am I actually afraid of? Because if you can't language it, if you can't articulate it, then that fear is forever just this miscellaneous kind of fuzzy feeling of apprehension. So when you can actually language your fear in writing, that's a huge first step, because most people never even get there. They're still stuck in the land of obliviousness. They're still stuck in the land of lack of awareness. So you've got to get to awareness first. Now, that's simply writing out, what are you afraid of? Right? Now, I recommend you create a massive hit list of every single fear that you've got. Create a list of every single one of the fears you've got, because as soon as you create a list of all of your fears, you can get to work on crossing them off one by one. But if you never create a list of them, then all those things that are holding you back, those invisible handbrakes that are preventing you from expanding and moving beyond your limitations, because fear is the only thing that holds us back, ultimately. Fear is the thing that prevents us from taking action. If you write a list of all those things, and if you commit to breaking through them, there's nothing left holding you back in life. So here is a really, really powerful process. I recommend everyone has a journal. I recommend everyone has a journal, one like this. Now, this journal you should have, and I'm just going to give you some processes and some recommended ways of approaching your personal development. You need to have a hit list of your fears. You also need to have a hit list of all your limiting beliefs. Now, I've covered limiting beliefs before in previous videos, so if you guys haven't watched those, go back and watch those videos on limiting beliefs. Fears, limiting beliefs, and also your goals. You need to have a list of goals. So these are the 3 major things. If you understand your fears, your limiting beliefs, and if you get clear on your goals, just those 3 categories alone will transform your life. Now, you want to have sections in your journal where you're constantly developing and evolving and expanding into those dimensions. And when you finally conquer those, boom, your life just expands infinitely, because you then have clarity on 3 of the most powerful categories that you simply, as a professional human being, you've got to be aware of. So anyway, that's step 1, is awareness. Now, step 2 is understanding. Now, what do I mean by understanding? Well, once you've written out your fear, you've then got to go to work on, well, hang on, let's actually understand, well, what is this? Because I now know that I'm experiencing it. Great, I've got a fear of rejection. Congratulations. I've got a fear of approaching, maybe it's good-looking women. That's one that I used to have. I used to have the fear of walking up to an attractive person, because again, a lot of limiting beliefs that sat behind that fear. I didn't believe I was good-looking enough I didn't believe that I was funny. I didn't believe all sorts of limiting beliefs about me and my attractiveness and my personality and my masculinity and all this kind of rubbish, right? And what that then generated was, it generated a fear of being rejected, a fear of, because again, I was projecting into my reality what's going to happen if I do this? Well, it's probably not going to go to plan. It's going to mean this, and she's going to say that, and all this kind of rubbish that comes out, right? So that was an example, right? So you've got to get to work on understanding, well, how are we creating the fear? How are we even doing this? What's the belief system underpinning this that's even generating that fear? Why is it even occurring in the first place? Because the person next to me, they don't experience that fear. So how am I generating that? What am I perceiving? What are my belief systems? What are my experiences such that I'm generating the fear? So that's the step 2, which is understanding. And ultimately it comes down to, anytime we experience fear, it comes back to, as I said before, our lack of ability to deal with the situation, our lack of ability to trust ourselves to deal with it, and then ultimately what the meaning is that we're going to make about that event, right? So, for example, you go back to my example. I had the limiting belief, I had the fear of walking up and approaching, speaking with a girl, speaking with a woman in general. I had huge anxiety around approaching women. Anyway, so in order for me to do that fear, what I needed to do was basically make that future imagined experience about me going and speaking to that person, and I'd imagine the worst thing possibly happening, which is she's maybe going to slap me or call me a loser or something like that, or I was going to start dribbling or something like that. And then what I was then doing was that I was then making that future imagined event mean that I wasn't good enough, that I was a loser, that I was this, that I was that I was going to be shamed, I was going to be embarrassed, all these other meanings and things that get attached along with it. So this is all just a fictitious imagination. Fear is just imagination. It's our imagination that's just gone completely wild in the wrong direction, as opposed to fear going wild in the right, as opposed to imagination going right in the right direction, which is things like excitement, it's things like passion, it's things like vision for what we're going to create for our life, it's things like creativity. So if you don't be aware of your fear, if you're not aware of where your thoughts are taking you, you can end up going down a massive, dirty, big, dark hole in fear, apprehension, anxiety, as opposed to going to creativity, inspiration, vision, excitement. So it's a very, very fine line which way you go. And ultimately, the trigger or the distinction, the difference is, are we imagining something positive or are we imagining something negative? So again, we need to understand the fear. Now, step 3 is, once we've done the analysis, if you like, we're aware of it, we're understood it, we've got awareness of it, and we now know how it's playing out. Oh, I've got a series of beliefs that's causing me to view this situation as being fearful. We can now take action. Now, this is the bit that a lot of people never get to. All right, so once you've got step 1 and 2, the next step that you have to do, it's not optional, you have to take step 3, which is you've got to take action. Now, this is where it gets a little bit challenging for some people. Actually, for most people, it gets challenging. Now, the reason being is, yes, we can intellectualize it. Yes, you can have awareness of it. Yes, you can understand it. However, you've only intellectualized it. So you kind of know, oh, this fear I've got, it's irrational. It doesn't really make sense. I've got this fear that I've kind of had for a long, long time, and I've got all these belief systems sustaining it, and it's still there. It's like, well, yes, it's still there because you've been doing it your whole life. Right? If you've been teaching your unconscious mind that thinking pattern for your whole entire life, for decades, and then all of a sudden you've now had a couple of thoughts in your mind and you go, you know what, this fear is not real. It's still wired, it's still hardwired it's still encoded in your neurology, in terms of your neural pathways. And so you have to take different action in order to update the internal software. Face everything and rise. I like that. Thank you, Mike. Face everything and rise. So that's the step, that's the critical step that most people forget, which is you've got to take action. Now, by taking action, what you're now doing is you're now integrating, right? You're integrating and you're updating your internal software. So what this means is, by taking new action, you actually teach yourself at the deepest unconscious level, I can trust myself to make decisions. I can trust myself to move forward. I can trust myself that I will handle that, and I can do it. So by taking action, you're updating all of your internal neural pathways in a very, very positive, life-affirming direction. So that's step 3, which is take action. Now, that leads to step 4, which is the integration, which now is the ongoing sustainment, if that's not a word, I just created it, sustaining of this new taking action, this new momentum. And by making these consistent decisions that are in alignment with what you wanted to create, this now updates all the neural connections. So what it now does is it overwrites the decades of habits and thinking and beliefs that were getting in the way, that were creating the fear, and you're now teaching your unconscious mind a different way of being. So now you're updating your software. It's like when you do a smartphone update on your software. It updates the software and it gives you a new revision. Hopefully it doesn't have too many bugs in it. But this process that we're talking about now is updating your beliefs, updating your experiences, and teaching yourself that you can handle whatever's on the other side of that. So it's teaching self-trust, which leads to self-worth, which leads to self-love. So ultimately, if you never get to that place where you're taking action, then you stagnate. You will stagnate because you're now not closing the deal. You're not closing the deal and teaching and re-communicating and creating different neural pathways, which says, you know what, this is okay. I can handle this. So that integration step is vital, and you've got to keep taking action consistently for the rest of your life in alignment with that new belief. Otherwise, you will revert back to the old belief and you'll go back to doing anxiety. You'll go back to doing the fear. So we have to keep moving forward. We have to keep taking action in the direction that life is supporting us. So this really is a powerful process, but only if we take action and keep taking action, right? So yes, it requires courage. Yes, it requires saying it might be uncomfortable the first couple of times. However, on the flip side of that, on the other side of that, it's so worth it, because think about it. If you never conquered the fear, if you never decide to take action, then it's like playing a game of peekaboo. You know when you play a game of peekaboo with one of your little nieces or nephews? It's like playing a game of peekaboo with your nephew, but pretending like they're not actually in the room with you, like they're not actually really there, right? It's the same with fears. If you're not willing to face every single one of your fears and create a hit list of every single fear and take action to break through it, you're deluding yourself to try and convince yourself that you're wanting to experience the highest level of self-trust, confidence, self-worth, and self-love, because there's always going to be stuff, there's going to be skeletons in the closet that you're not dealing with. So as a conscious human being, we have to take responsibility for dealing with our fears. We have to. Or not. If you choose not to, then it's not going to teach you very much self-confidence. It's not going to teach you self-worth. It's not going to teach you that you can handle anything. So hiding from fears, right, really it's playing a very, very small game, and it's pretending like nothing's there. Hey Mel, good to see you here. So it's your duty and your responsibility as a professional human being to create that hit list of every single one of your fears, and you have to bust through them. If you're aware of it, you have no choice but to break through that fear, because to choose not to push through that fear is to subscribe to mediocrity. I'll say that again. To choose not to take responsibility to break through every single one of your fears you're aware of is to subscribe to living a small life. It's to being diminished. It's surrendering and saying, you know what? I'm just going to let this fear control me. Now, look, try it on. Try it on. You can either break through every single one of your fears and be empowered and be fearless, or you can not break through your fears and live in the shadows. Which scenario, which life do you want to subscribe to? Now, there's no judgment here. You are fully welcome to live in a world where you let your fears drive you, where you let your fears control you. That's not the world I want to live in. And I certainly hope that's not the world that anyone who wants to consciously create the life of their dreams wants to live in. So therefore, what we need to do is take responsibility for acknowledging, addressing, being aware of, understanding, and taking action in every single fear. And for me, this is one of the most important things of my coaching, of my life. This is a life philosophy. If there's something that creates fear in me, I know, this is something I've got to deal with. And I make a list of it. I make a note of it. I go, rightio, let's go through the process. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'll give you an example. I went out into the first time I did this, I went out busting phobias on the streets. And for those of you that might have seen my videos, hey John, good to see you here, mate. How are you? Thanks, Kat. Yeah, got to take responsibility. I went out busting streets on the phobias. Busting streets on the phobias. That would be difficult, wouldn't it? I went out busting phobias on the streets of Hobart. And I made up a big sign. And the sign said free 5-minute phobia busts. Now, prior to doing this, I kind of knew, you know what, it'd be fun to go out there. I know how to bust phobias. Phobias are one of the easiest things to bust in the world, right? They're really simple. It's 5 minutes to cure someone's phobia. Really, really simple process. Anyway, I went out walking along the streets and I was like, I felt a little bit of anxiety. I felt a little bit of fear bubble. And I was like, I know I've got to break through this, because if I'm afraid to walk along the street with a sign and cure people's phobias, then I know that I'm limited. I'm kind of holding myself back? Because if I can't break through that, if I can't just wander through the streets with a sign and kind of do a little bit of an experiment, where else am I holding myself back in life? So that was an example of where I just decided, you know what? Anytime I become aware of a fear, I'm going to break through it. I'm going to, now again, this doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, and I realize that everyone, some people want to build up to this at their own pace. However, for me, I'm just like, if I'm aware of a fear, I'm going to bust through it. I'm just going to take it out. I don't want to live my life in fear. So I'm going to move to this side. I'm going to say, look, let's just make it happen. So that's my philosophy for living. Now, yes, is that necessarily a comfortable way to live? Hell no, right? Being on the edge and facing your fears and being willing to break through everything, being willing to push past all your limitations and become limitless, that's not necessarily a comfortable feeling. If you're after a comfortable feeling, you're playing the wrong game. If you're after a comfortable feeling, go back and just play a small game. Like literally, life can be so super easy. If you want life to be easy, just go and don't challenge yourself. Just hide in a corner, and life would be pretty easy. But how expansive would that be? How amazing would that be? So my philosophy here is it needs to be an ideology. It needs to be your philosophy. You've got to put it on your agenda to identify every single fear, understand it, master it, and take action in the face of it. Now, yes, that requires courage. It requires tenacity. Yes, I recommend having a coach, having a support network, having people that can help you and champion you. Yes, give you strategies, give you skills, give you knowledge. All those other tools are important. However, it starts with an attitude of, you know what? I am going to take responsibility for every single one of my fears that I've got, because I've created them through my belief system, through my experiences, through my both combination of my conscious and unconscious choices, all through the aspects of my life. And I've now ended up with these fears. So I can now have the choice. Now that I'm aware of it, I have a choice. Do I want to keep it, or do I want to get rid of it? There you go. It's a choice. Like everything in life, it's a choice. You can either choose to keep subscribing to your fears, or you can choose to do something about it. Now, obviously, what's required to do something about it is having courage and taking responsibility to deal with that. Hey, Monica. Thanks for joining in. Hey, Brody. Good to see you here, mate. So I'm going to summarize it. I'm just mindful of hit the half an hour, guys. I want to always keep these relatively short. So in the last few minutes, I'm going to do a bit of a summary for you about, kind of a bit of a recap. So we know that fear is created. It's created in the mind. We know that it's derived and it's generated from beliefs, right? Our beliefs, our perceptions, the way that we see reality is creating all of our fears. And ultimately, what it leads back to is a lack of belief, lack of us backing ourselves to be able to handle and trust ourselves to handle whatever's going to happen. So to put it out there to the extreme, this is the ultimate extreme, right? Which is kind of mind-blowing. But think about it. The worst thing that can ever happen in life is you die. Really, isn't it? The worst thing that can ever happen is you do something and you die. Right? Now, I'm sorry to end on a somber note, but think about it. And I use this example to kind of really stretch your thinking. The worst thing that could ever happen in the history of the world is you're going to die. And if you're dead, so what? If you're gone, there's nothing you can do about it, right? So you can kind of use these mental hacks to kind of think, well, yeah, look, if that was to happen, there's nothing I can do about it, right? And even death, you'll handle death. Everything you can go through, everything you can possibly conceive of in life, if you were to go through that, you will handle it. So having the belief or not recognizing that we can handle anything is one of the biggest limitations that a human being has. Because you can handle everything. I can handle everything. You and I, if we were put in a situation, we would handle it. When I say we'd handle it, we'd experience it. We would experience it to the best of our ability. That's handling it. And we will deal with it. Is it going to be comfortable? Maybe not. Right? Is it going to feel good? Maybe not. However, can we handle it? Yes, we will handle it because we'll experience it and we'll move through it and then we'll learn from it and then we'll move on to the next thing. So ultimately, we will handle everything. So I recommend a very, very convenient assumption of reality to create, which is another word for a belief. Convenient assumption of reality would be, I can handle anything. Because the worst thing that could ever happen is I'm going to die. And everything else in between is far less than that, so I can handle it. So again, I'm just using these thinking experiments to expand my thinking, to kind of hack the illusion that fear is, to move beyond it and to take responsibility for, you know what, this is all just a construction. Part of being part of this consciousness, naturally what gets created is we just create these illusions. We create these fears for ourselves. They're not real, right? So we're going to take responsibility for, well, okay, that's a hallucination. I've created a hallucination, now I'm going to move beyond it. So belief that you want to install at the deepest level and reaffirm to yourself is, I can handle anything. I can handle anything. Doesn't matter what happens, I can handle it. I will handle it. I will learn from it. Will it be comfortable? Hell no. However, will I move through it? Will I learn from it? Will I move on to the next thing? You betcha. I think that's a pretty resourceful, pretty cool belief to have. So that's pretty much it, guys. I want to wind it up and say, there you go. That was my take on fear. So thank you guys for jumping in. Thank you guys for joining. Maybe at the end, if you guys have got any questions. Hey, Andrew, good to see you here, buddy. Yeah, thank you. So if you guys have got any questions, please drop in if you've got any questions about what I've just covered. This is a big topic. Please do me a favor. Create yourself a hit list of your list of fears. Create also, while you're at it, create your list of limiting beliefs and also your list of goals. You've got to have those 3 lists and you've got to keep them front and center. You've got to confront them every single day. And if you consciously confront every single one of those, you're going to bust through every single one of the fears that you've got. However, is it going to be easy? Is it going to be comfortable? Hell no. Hell no. Thank you for the love, guys. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for joining in. And how good is this skyline? I just was so tuned into you guys. I didn't realize just how beautiful this is. So I'm coming, for those that don't know, I just live in Scarborough. My beach is literally a 5-minute walk that way. And this is such a beautiful place to live. So thank you guys. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Mike. And Mike, I'll see you on Saturday. For those that are coming along to the transformation experience, we are going to be going super deep on transforming people's lives on Saturday. It's going to be incredible. Kat, I know you had the pleasure and the privilege of coming to the one in Melbourne. For all the guys coming in Perth, you guys are in for a real treat on Saturday and Sunday because I get to share 2 whole days of giving the best of the best life transforming content to you guys. So anyone here who's watching from Perth or anyone who's not in Perth and you can make it to Perth on Saturday and Sunday, you are going to be in for a real treat because I'm going to share the best content that I have for transforming, upgrading and shifting your life to make it what you truly desire. Yeah, looking forward to catching up with you, Mike. Yeah. As always, sending you guys so much love, lots of love and blessings. Wishing you a magical week. When's your next one in Perth after this weekend? Hey, Monica. I haven't got dates for the next one yet. At this stage, I'm only planning on running 1 per year. So look, if you want to get along to this one, trust me, it is going to blow your mind and is going to create a huge transformation. And every single person that's coming along, that your mind is going to be blown with what I'm going to be sharing with you. Thank you, Kat. There you go. Yes, it was awesome. It was so much fun. So thank you guys for tuning in. How good is this? Thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to sharing more knowledge and wisdom next week. And for those on the transformation experience, I'll see you guys this Saturday for a powerful experience. As always, lots of love. I'll see you guys very soon. Bye for now.